You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to kind of do a catch-up with an old friend as well as a deep dive into retail media, maybe some Amazon Marketing Cloud, maybe the agency, how they've developed and changed over the past 6 to 7 years, what we see in this space. Anyways, Kashif has been around the network, has just been a great friend and partner supporter to the network as a whole for forever. I just feel like he's a super close friend at this point in time. And, Kashif, I'll kick it over to you. You want to jump into a background yourself, and then we can kind of jump into the conversation. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. First and foremost, thanks so much for having me on. Our conversations are always something I look forward to. They're so organic, and I'm really excited to be on today. I think for me, Aaron, we've been working together for, since 2019, and my background has really been in the space of Amazon agencies, right? So really, if you think about it, the advent of the word Amazon agency really started back in, you would say around 2010, 2012, when you did have a handful of agencies that were really focused on just getting brands and content on the platform. I remember those days of NIS setup and new item setup and those long Excel spreadsheets that you had to fill out, and then you would have to write in all your basic copy. So when you go to the product detail page, all the above the fold content, right? You're talking about the titles, bullets, short descriptions. I mean, those days were
the days the new item setup for is awesome. Yeah,
they were, man, and it was all about the new item setup. It's like everyone just had to be an Excel guru, and so. That was back in 2010, 2012. And then I think really then with the advent of A+ content became really cool. And then content was king, right? Very much on Amazon. And so it was all about hero imagery and lifestyle images and really taking advantage of that one pager in essence that you have on Amazon where you can really speak to a brand and what is the message you're trying to get across. And then 2014, 2015, sponsored ads first launched. That was a big deal. First time Amazon is allowing sellers to advertise on their platform, drive traffic. And it's like, what does that mean? And I don't know, Aaron, if you remember, but some of those ROAS early days for anyone that was spending any money where it was ridiculous. It was like 20x. So it was like a
I remember, that when I reported first to the marketing team, that it was 17 and a half. And then we hit some that were 35x.
Yeah.
And that's funny because their comment was, we were like, well, spend more. But I can't.
Yeah.
There weren't enough. It was a nickel, a bid, right? I couldn't spend enough. There wasn't that many searches on the products.
Yeah.
Oh, those were the days.
Those were the days. Man.
And you didn't need ad tech. I mean, we can get into ad tech. I mean, we were all doing it manually, just on the back end. It was easy.
It was really easy. And it was we were just basically, what was it? Right? It was copy and paste of Google AdWords, basically what it was. And so if you knew Google PPC, you now are an Amazon ads expert in 2014. So yeah, it was fun times there for sure. But yeah, no, I think that, so as you go from there, and then now we're at a place, 10 years later of Amazon advertising, we're such a huge business, right? It's a place for Amazon where they're making a killing just for themselves. But, you think about how the platform changed where everyone's on the platform and you can be a digital only, very aggressive, launch your brand on Amazon and make a big difference. And, look at the story of so many stories I had, in front of us. I remember Buy Beverage was one of the brands that we were supporting at one of the agencies I was working in. And, they ultimately sold to Dr. Pepper, but in just a few years, launching on Amazon only was their primary platform. And then they sold to Dr. Pepper. And it was crazy to just see how they were just doing the right thing on Amazon advertising. They had product detail pages at a brand store. They're driving traffic. They own their brand. And so, yeah, it's fun to see now where we're at full funnel advertising, looking at data that we've never had before. I know we could dive into that stuff, but it's been quite the journey here, especially in the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, the one thing that stayed the same though, and I think that Buy did in a lot of the winners back in the day, and including up till now, but then it was that focus on content,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That is where you won. And I think a lot of people neglected the content when I was launching. We actually hired a full-time copywriter.
mm,
It was from like a local newspaper, a guy who had
yeah,
retired, but loved to edit copy.
yeah,
And he came up with some of the most creative stuff. And it went beyond just, making sure we had bullet points, but they
yeah,
were, you know, edited, crafted bullet points and titles, and then A plus detail page content that was intriguing, actually. Um, if and it's just funny how that content piece has been one of those things as ad spend, technology,
yeah,
day parting, marketing cloud, everything else, all these different things. It still comes back to the fact that somebody lands on a detail page
yeah,
to convert.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And it's
And
powerful. It's just so powerful, right? And so the content, I mean, I was at Content 26, right? Back in 2014,
oh, right.
2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I kind
Right.
of really got my name into this space, because I was back in the software development testing world and consulting professional services. And I really enjoyed that, right? Working with larger clients. But like when I first got into space, Content 26 was content was the king, right? That was like
Yeah.
the big push was like, you need to have the best pictures. And I remember we had like 30 editors at one point, Aaron, like on standby because these projects would come in just like they'd flow in and out. So you can't have like 30 writers and editors. So we had a bunch of freelancers that we were using, and it was an interesting process. But man, these projects, especially those ones I remember coming at the end of the year when
Oh,
people
yeah.
wanted to launch and really for seasonality before Prime Day was
You
really
also have budgets at the end of the year that you want to use up, right?
yeah. Budgets at the end of the year, new product launches, go and look at our top ASINs again. And I remember those photos of photo shoots and just focusing on just content. It was actually a lot of fun. And I love what you said, Aaron, because I think it's very relevant. Like Amazon advertising is everything, right? We understand that in terms of really having an approach to drive that traffic, but like you nailed it. It's like when you come to that page, are you speaking to your consumer? Are you really uh, focusing on those features that they're looking like so they don't go to another page, right? And I remember preaching that forever in my agency life. You got to have comparison charts. You got to have above the fold, below the fold. You want to make sure you don't have text on images because that's not searchable, right? You got to always speak to the A9, A10 algorithm. So that stuff is still relevant and still fun. But like, those are just like now the basics, right? Like if you don't do that right, you're really not, you're not going to be able to fully take advantage of your full funnel and advertising strategy at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, and that was what kind of brought in that you mentioned like the algorithm, right? Is this weird blend of you're trying to influence search in the algorithm with the copy that's there,
Yeah.
but you're also trying to make sure that when people land on it, it doesn't look like just a bunch of gobbledygook of search terms crammed in there.
Yeah.
So it was all of a sudden this really careful balance between algorithms, which nobody really had to, and nobody was selling on Google, right? You didn't
Right.
really have to. You could just handle the search terms different ways, but when it lands on the page, now everything there has to be tuned both to the customer and how to convert them, as well as the algorithm to make
Yeah.
sure you're still showing up in organic search, which is obviously the cheapest way around.
That's right.
And that was, I think, what really separated people is, and I think it's really interesting. We can get into AI. It's like this idea of these people who learn how to prompt. Early on, it was those people who learned how to craft the content that was
Yeah.
both nailing it on the search algorithm as well as actually speaking to the customer. Those were the people that could do that by practice or just naturally, and they crushed it. And I think we'll get in there. Everybody's talking AI and the AI
Yeah.
prompts. Those people who could learn the prompts, they're just going to accelerate, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be able to do things faster using AI.
Exactly. No, I think
Yeah.
it's spot on. And I think that's what it is. Like we are now truly into the world where everyone wants to talk about AI. How do I take advantage of AI? I mean, ChatGPT was huge, right? That really kind of changed the conversation and really made people start thinking about, okay, this is now an application of AI and it's kind of fun. I can talk to this prompt and it could spit back some stuff. But like, now, especially coming from an agency side and a very creative agency where over the last couple of years, it was true testing of generative AI and how can you actually use this to really create videos, create imagery and lifestyle images because I'm a brand on Amazon and I don't have a budget to go and do a full photo shoot, right? So can I leverage generative AI to create assets for me that maybe are not the equivalent to a photo shoot, but good enough, right? Good enough on Amazon, good enough for me to achieve what I want. So that's been so much fun, right? Just seeing that and still very early days, and I know we're going to get into it, but just having people talking about it over the last year to 18 months where it's on everyone's mind, those conversations are fun and they're really kind of cool to be part of because we're just scratching the surface of what that really means for us.
Yeah, walk me through, the pendulum on the agencies, because, back in the early days, you didn't need one to get up and going. I didn't have one.
Yeah,
Then at
that's
the
right.
end of the day, I desperately needed one. That's where I think we'd met, like, was at, or you were at Orc Pacific before they were acquired. And, you got to a scale where I needed one. And so, I was just catching up with John the other day,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's, that pendulum seemed to swing where you need an agency. Then some people were trying to build it all out internally. And then it came back because you needed it because of the ad tech that was there. And it was super complicated.
That's right.
And now, like, where do you see that pendulum swinging when people are saying, hey, do I need, because you're not in the Amazon agency space, right? So how do you see that looking like now? You've lived in it, you've lived out of it.
Yeah.
Do people need an agency?
It's a great question because I think it really just depends where you are, right? So I think, getting back to your point, 10 years in the Amazon agency space, I just left it literally on December 31st, right? So when I joined XBars as the CEO, it was on January 1st. That was the first time I left the agency world and really moved to ad tech. But what's been fun about this, Aaron, is I'm still working with agencies, right? A lot of our
Right.
clients are agencies that are interested in having an ad tech platform like XMars to help them. And so I think I look at it this way: if you're depending on the size of your brand, if you're a third party seller and you're fairly new on Amazon and you're just launching on Amazon, there's advantages of going with a agency that's on the smaller side that's willing to do it on a percentage of total sales, right? And then when you get to the point where you're growing and you're kind of now starting to be a little bit more comfortable there, I think there's so many brands I see that are ultimately looking to hire in-house and they go through that process, right? Like, oh, I'll hire one person, two-person that will cover the cost of an agency easier. But I think you nailed it earlier in your statement that I think when you get to a certain size where now you're competing and now Amazon is becoming a larger part of your business, you have so many things that you need in your toolbox to win on Amazon. You need tech. You need to be able to make sure that you have the data, you have insights, you have actionable steps you can take. So I think that's where an agency in today's world still can be very valuable to a brand, where they are not just dependent on a team of two or three in house and they got tech. Of course, that can work, but like as you grow and depending on your turnover on your team, agency advantages that you have an agency you could go to. They'll provide resources no matter what and then really help you kind of like tackle those things. You know, flip side, you're a brand, you're buying maybe four or five different softwares. So it really just depends on the brand, but I do think agencies are still very relevant. Now, the difference though, Aaron, I think is agencies more than ever before have to continuously show the value they're bringing to that brand, right? And bringing to that seller. So it's not just like the same old. Year after year, you have to show the value, the incremental growth in sales. What new strategy are you bringing to the table? How are you really talking about omni-channel? So I think all of those, and then of course AI and the adoption of AI. So I think the agencies that are going to do well ultimately and survive will do those pieces the right way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's hard internally. I ran into, you have people who leave, they grow, they train, and if you're doing the right thing, right, you're developing people to the point where they're highly desirable, and then they end up leaving. there's a turnover, but there's also with an agency, one of the issues with agency is there's very few of them that actually work. That's the
That's right.
reality.
That's
And a
right.
lot of people get burned out or exasperated, going through agencies that haven't been vetted out by either their peers, the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think the agencies bring that I see a lot of is just the added experience. They're
Yeah.
dealing with 15 to 50 other brands. They're managing a higher level of spend. You're not just leveraging your own learnings on your own dime, but everybody else's, what works, what doesn't,
Exactly.
how to use the marketing cloud, how to use DSP to your full advantage. Just there's something different when you hire an expert in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Those insights are very invaluable, right? And I think that's what it is. So today's day and age, that's exactly it. Insights, AMC, AI adoption, and then really how do I bring first party data into the mix? And so I can have that really for the first time ever, especially if we continue to talk about like the space of Amazon. I have consumer behavior data that I've never had before, or I had the data, but it was in a silo. Now all of a sudden with the advent of Amazon Marketing Cloud, which by the way has been around since 2019, 2020, right? But no one really knew how to use it because the starting point was tough, right? Starting point was you need to do DSP and you need to also know SQL to really, it's just a clean room, right? In order to really query and pull that data. And so I think we're at a point now where it's so much easier to now use Amazon Marketing Cloud because there's software and there's tools or there's consulting firms that can do the pre-SQL for you and can really guide you on it. But it's still so, I think so little sellers and brands are really using that to really kind of pull that data and start looking at this rich amount of data that we've never had before on consumer behavior and pull it all in one place, right? Along with your first party data from your CRM for anything. I think, Aaron, over the next like 12 to 18 months, we're just going to continue to see that being a big focal point in the industry and just having brands and sellers really recognize the importance of that and then the adoption of it. Because I think really what's key with AMC is the adoption is so different. It can be very different from seller to seller to brand to even category to category. So, that's what excites me because you sit down and work with each client and just see what makes sense for you. And so, that's going to really accelerate, I think, over the next 12 to 18 months. And then I think that's where brands will be like, oh man, this is something that I've never really had access to. And so it'll change the way they look at some of their investments on the media side.
yeah. I want to just dig into the marketing cloud a little bit because everybody out there thinks everybody else is fully utilizing it and they're behind. And you were just making a statement that like most brands have just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Like, what percentage of brands do you kind of get the feeling are full-fledged using it to the full extent, which it can be, or at this point in time? And then how many brands are falling in the middle, and then how many brands haven't touched it all? Is it like 90% haven't touched it at all?
I would say that there's a lot of interest in it now, especially the large enterprise brands because they've heard about it. Definitely, the entry point for AMC has historically been a certain DSP spend. So I think you're seeing the larger enterprise brands and clients and sellers really start to not only like learn about it, but really kind of look at use cases and start looking at how do we get into the entry point there. But I think if you look at just generally speaking out of sellers, yeah, I mean, just throwing numbers out there, I do think we're still at the early advent of brands and sellers really thinking about it and understanding what it means. And so, yeah, I would say majority of the brands out there have no idea what it really is still, how it could impact them. And so I think that's where there's a lot of space to kind of grow there. And I think the big thing is where you start is just, what are those few one or two, three metrics that you're looking for that can help you really understand the data and just start seeing it from there. But yeah, no, I think Aaron, I would have ciphered to say, over 70% of brands are not utilizing it. Even with the clients we work with at XMars, we have some of the higher usages of total AMC instances and queries around the world globally. And so that says a lot because I think there's still a lot of brands that are not there. So I think the big thing is I tell all the brands that we work with, like, start playing with it. start looking at it, start really, it doesn't cost anything to you. If you're running DSP, you will have access to AMC. And in the future, the entry point to get into AMC will be even less rules and regulations that Amazon will be announcing here in the next 6 to 12 months, I'm sure. But yeah, you have to start really paying attention to it now.
Yeah, it's in the same spot, I guess, as AI. I guess at the end of the day,
Yeah,
everybody thinks everybody else has jumped into it, but they haven't. They're wondering what tool should I use, and the reality is like, just try,
yeah,
right?
it's
Like,
fine.
just
Exactly.
start playing around with it.
I mean, I think, Aaron, the best way I look at it is I came from an agency world, right? And so I did the exact same thing. Just try it. For me, it was like I keep hearing about AI, especially in sponsored ads and AI and ad tech. What does that exactly mean? And it's not rules-based automations. Rules-based automations, not AI, right? And so I've done that. So what does that really mean? And so it was just testing the software that has that feature, and then really seeing the results. And I think it was very powerful because what you could see is like, wow, with machine language learning, it's literally doing bid and bid optimization,
And you
100
can
times a
ask
day.
it to do anything.
Exactly.
That's
It's crazy. It just go and do it. Like you go and do it. You don't even have to set rules. And then to look at the log files and then see, oh wow, yeah, this automation in AI did like 3,000 transactions this month, and then seeing the performance, right? Performance improvements over time, where really thinking of day parting, time parting, and not really having to be worried about having people on the keyboards at those times. It was quite, I got to tell you, 2023 was very eye-opening for me in AI when it came to ad tech, because at an agency, I tested it. And so I was able to see it firsthand. And so that's where I get so passionate about talking about it to my clients and folks out there in the industry, because it's like, man, it makes a huge difference. And so try it, test it. It doesn't hurt to go do a 30-day trial. Like there's software companies that will do that.
Yeah, well, so walk me through XMars just a little bit, the platform, because to get you to jump out of the agency world,
Yeah.
which I mean, you were crushing it at there had the, and then you said you said it like 2023 was eye-opening enough that you're like, I'm gone and I'm jumping on a different train. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this train is going, super fast, and you're like, actually, I want to jump on that other train. This
Yeah.
might be going even faster.
Yeah.
Walk me through like that as a whole. I'd love to hear a little bit about XMars as a whole,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think what
and
was
how you fall into AI space. That would be awesome.
yeah, no, I mean, listen, I always, you and I talked about this, right? It was always interesting from an agency point of view, because you're still talking about people and expertise and tech that ultimately you can develop your own, but a lot of agencies are using tech that's out there. And so there was always a fascination of like that technology, and really, being part of that world and seeing like the advancements there. So, I've used, you name it, the tools that are out there we've used, right? And so I think what was cool was going from tech to tech to tech, or tool to tool to try it, and finally coming across XMars I was their customer, and I really got to test it and really look at the AI and the algorithms and log files, like I mentioned earlier, and really seeing the impact it's making in performance and the actual transactions it takes to get there, all without any humans, was what really kind of started exciting me. And then I started seeing it, Aaron, across multiple brands, right? So being at an agency, we have hundreds of clients, and seeing it's not just for like small clients or mid-size or enterprise, across the board, you can really cater it to the brand depending on what their goals are, whether even if the goals are ACOS versus ROAS, you can set that, and really with 3-4 clicks, it's done, right? And then it allowed me and my team, at least for my ad managers, to be more strategic, like go out there and talk to the clients more about omni-channel, or really, looking at more ways to bringing value to the client. So that was like, in that 10 years, this platform really excited me, because I hadn't seen anyone else do that. And then at the same time, where the agency I was at, we were just starting to test and learn a lot of copywriting and a lot of image creation and video creation with AI and generative AI. And so it was like the perfect storm of 2023, where I was getting all this visibility, and it got me excited. And so I think what ultimately happened for me was like I just got hooked. I got hooked, and I started realizing that Been in the space 10 years. I enjoy it, but kind of the next chapter for me is I want to be down this path and continue to invest in my career in AI innovation. XMars winning the innovation award at Unbox last year at Amazon was very impressive. And I got to know the company, quite frankly, as a client over a span of 6 months. So, Aaron, it was like the perfect opportunity when things kind of come together and you're like, when organic conversations are happening about a CEO opening, as now they're in year 2 and they're really growing in the US. And you know me, I love building, it's what I did.
Yeah.
Content 26 and at Orca Pacific. And so it was like that excitement of doing that with a tech and a platform that I believe in because I saw it firsthand. And even Amazon recognized it with the innovation award last year at Unbox. So it just came together really well. It wasn't something that was planned. I was at a very good job, comfortable job at a really great agency, but it was too good of an opportunity to pass up ultimately.
Yeah, I mean that's your passion anyways too, right? Like building and you're great at it. So um where does it go? Like do we get to the point where here's my ideal scenario.
Mhm.
My ideal scenario is I've got my brand, I've got my brand guidelines, I've got an isolated AI machine learning, right? I don't want it pulling everything from, the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
I I plug in my brand guidelines. I plug in example video content,
Mhm.
um, and I put in a budget,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then I hit go. And on
Mhm.
the back end, it's generating ad copy, text, visual, video, and testing it and learning it,
Yeah.
A/B testing on all the different platforms and regionally based on what's moving and what's not. And so I could, yeah, obviously, then it's creating different ads for the Pacific Northwest than it
Yeah.
is for the Southeast.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps going. Like, are we going to get there?
We are, and I think faster than we think. So I think a lot of the AI, even what I've seen in the company I'm with, it's focused a lot on sponsored ads, which is the most obvious, right? Because that's where most people are spending their time and money. And so, really to kind of master that. But what's cool is now, imagine now with DSP, you have AI and you have the same type of automation and you have the same type of machine language learning that's really kind of coming into play when you're talking about your programmatic spend and how do you do that specific targeting, and especially those consumers that are really not shopping on Amazon or leaving Amazon, and how do you really retarget them? So I think AI in that, and then AI just across the board in a retail media platform. So we talk a lot about Amazon, but there's Walmart there too, right? Walmart's starting to grow a little bit slowly, but it still continues to grow in the space of budget and dollars going towards retail media. And then you have those top 10 e-retailers, the Targets of the world, right? The Instacarts of the world. And so I think what's really cool is like, I think the adoption of AI, you're going to see across all of that. You're going to see it across all of the full funnel advertising. But I also, what you just said is very relevant. Like, really let AI and the technology really take care of it from even like the beginning of launching a product on Amazon, creating the copy, creating assets, going ahead and setting up doing the organic SEO keywords, and then moving towards AI automation in terms of how do I set up my campaigns based on my budget, based on my daily budgets or my goals and everything. So we're seeing a lot of that stuff right now. Even with XBars, we're doing the AI adoption right now within DSP. We're excited about that rolling out here very soon, and then the continuation of that through omni-channel and those other e-retail channels. It's part of roadmaps right now. Like, it's part of our roadmap, and it's going to be part of roadmaps more and more. And then agencies too, right? Everyone think about it. Even agencies like creative agencies, they're very much focusing on that right now too. How do we really look at being valuable and still being relevant? Because not everyone's going to pay a 500,000 or $1 million for that photo shoot or that commercial, right? And so I think seeing just content creation there, I mean, we're starting to see it more and more, even in streaming videos and really, smaller budgeted documentaries that are coming out that are very focused on like AI generated content. So I think if you look at the whole experience on e-commerce, though, I think we're not too far from that being really kind of the norm, probably here in the next 24 to 36 months.
Oh, that's like tomorrow.
Yeah, that's like tomorrow. That's like that. You know how, remember we talked about like, oh, in our lifetime, we might see this, we might see that, right? Like I remember hearing that 20 years ago, even when we, and even the iPhone, when it first came out, that wasn't too long ago, but it was like, never did you think in your lifetime, but 24, 36 months is like, yeah, it's like literally tomorrow. And so it's going to continue to change I think the space for e-commerce, retail media and sellers. And I mentioned this earlier to someone that just today is like, all of this is helping the small guys too. Like a lot of people talk about the big brands, enterprise brand, but think about it, you're a small third-party seller on Amazon or Walmart, or now with all of this technology and tools, you don't need to have massive budgets. You can compete relatively head on and really not be that third-party seller 5, 6 years ago that was like, how do I really do this? Because 5, 6 years ago, you know this, right, Aaron? The marketplaces like Amazon already started to get saturated, right? So it was all about spending. It was all about spending ad dollars, doing the basics on the web, content, but you had to pay to play. And at this point now, with technology, AI, creating of assets, really being able to do that on relatively cheap with the technology, and you look at technology costs, man, if I was a small seller right now, this would be exciting. I mean, this is like really kind of evening the playing field in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Just one of the things I tell you is like AI is here is because the cost of a lot of these tools is going down. Right. It used to be, if that thing is $8,000 to $15,000 a month, it's because it's not real machine learning and AI. It's sent overseas, pounding on keyboards overnight and coming back with an answer in the morning, but you still have to pay for all those people doing it.
Yeah.
And now these new tools are inexpensive. You can stack them up, and you're right. The small guys actually a lot of times, they're more agile. You see a lot of these new brands, these new products popping up, and if you're willing to lose $80,000 to $100,000 the first year on advertising, which sounds crazy, to get to be number one on the platform and then set it and forget it, that's a different mindset than most of corporate America has here in the US. And that's where there's a lot of overseas sellers that are willing to do it. And they get the number one best-selling ranking. Yes, they lost 80, 100 grand over the past year, but they're going to net, 300 in the next 2. So they made their money back threefold, and they're rolling.
And they're nimble. And that's the advantage of smaller companies or smaller brands, where they can be nimble. Because you start talking about the Fortune 1000 or even some of the larger enterprise brands, there's a lot of like confusion and education. You don't have the right people in those positions. I mean, recently I was talking to a couple of my friends in the space, and there was a lot of conversation about how do we help the larger brands adopt to the trends of retail media? What type of talent and roles do you need to get into those companies in order for the conversation to change from legacy, old school thinking to really now like, hey, we really need to think about this a little bit different with omnichannel and AI and really the adoption of this technology. And I think it's such an interesting point, because a lot of the brands we work with, we walk into the building, they're still right there. They'll still write into people that are still begrudgingly on Amazon and really just, trying to embrace how do we continue to grow there, and then not even ready to start talking about AI and generative AI. And so it's interesting. I feel like the larger brands in many ways have a longer way to go. And that's where they're the ones that are very open-minded, that the leadership team allows for specialty and consultants to come in, or they start hiring in those positions. I think those are going to be the companies that are really going to kind of get a step ahead of this, right? And so it's going to be fascinating to kind of watch that. But I see that almost every day, right? Like when we're working with brands and sellers, it's the ones that are embracing change that are able to see the results quicker. And a lot of this is test and learns, but the fun thing is the test and learns are not scary anymore. They're not as risky.
Yeah.
And you could do it relatively quick. Like you could do it with a quick turnaround time and see like, okay, does it work or not? And if it doesn't, then you scale back. You go back to like, okay, maybe we wait, maybe, we get to that, but you got to test, you got to try, you got to have the conversation, you got to ask the questions,
It always befuddles me. Yes, because in marketing, everybody understands the A/B test, but they won't always A/B test, and this goes, I wouldn't say as much as the digital marketer today, but from a few years back, and now a lot of executives, they understand A/B testing in the marketing space. Does this ad work? Does that ad work? But they're not doing it in the ad tech space with, does this new technology work? Does this new technology work? You literally have to be A/B testing nonstop at this point in time.
Yeah.
I mentioned this, to brands all the time, especially on the larger side. You need to have an e-commerce, a digital focused, now an AI focused, basically research budget
Yeah.
that you're allowing a team to blow through it all every year, knowing that there's no foreseeable outcome other than there will be something that hits and wins.
Yeah.
It's, I was a chemist for 6 years, right? Making
Yeah.
drugs for phase 1 and 2 clinical trials. And that was it. You're dumping money in, and you know that you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but something will hit because you're doing all the right things and you're testing and learning as much as you can.
Yeah.
And there's not as much going on. And maybe that is the role where the next round of agencies, as I see them kind of morph, is that one that is almost coming alongside, and they're the ones that are testing and learning all the new ad tech,
Yeah.
or not just ad tech, any kind of AI tech.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're the ones that are testing it and then informing, but then you have to have obviously a leadership team that's willing to test and learn along with it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's going to be the key. I know people are still nervous about it. There's a lot of like, what does this exactly mean? But I think that you're right. There's enough consultants, agencies there that you can do this relatively cheap, and you can do it relatively quick, and you can really look at to adopt it to what's specific to you, right? So, obviously in our space of e-commerce and retail media, Amazon's still king, and so it's with technology and where a lot of AI advancements have happened in the ad tech platform. These are quick tests. Like a lot of the clients we talk to is like 30-day trial, 30-day trial. Let's show you in 30 days. And in 30 days, if you don't see the results, there you go, right? And so, that's where that's an easier sell, right, Aaron, versus someone that you're talking about, months and months. But you're right. I think the companies that kind of have that spare budget or allocate budget to do some R&D and do some testings, you're going to be better off with it because you're going to fall behind eventually. If you don't adopt it now, you push it out to next year, the year after, eventually, as a company and as a brand, you're going to get behind. And so that's not what we want to see, right?
So if we think about that retail media network landscape as a whole,
Yeah.
we're talking about leadership, we're talking about education. Like, what do you see happening in that space? Because
Yeah.
there needs to be a lot of education, and I don't think people are purposely ignoring it. I mean, it's been a weird world for the past 4 years. Right? There's been a lot of things that out of nowhere, retail media just explodes onto the scene.
Yeah.
And it's just one more thing that people have to handle, but it's a super important thing. Would love to hear, like,
Yeah.
how do you look at that environment as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like looking at some of these signals of, the advent of technology, the advent of rich data, consumer data that we've never had before. Honestly, Aaron, there's so many ways to get training and education in this space. You guys do a great job with BWG, where you're doing events on and topics there, bringing industry leaders or even bringing for brands to see so they can start just being educated on this. So I don't think it's like one thing to do. I think it's a combination of continuous education training programs. And if you're a brand, take advantage of those. Go to the events, listen to the podcast. There's webinars out there. Really start getting more educated there so then you can educate your leadership team. And I think look at the data. The data and the use cases speak for itself. Excuse me. There's a lot there. There's a lot of data and rich use cases in your specific category, no matter what category you belong to as a seller, where you can look at the data and see how it can be. What is that type of data that you can see? What is that transparency that you can get on? That you can ultimately use to kind of make it as a use case for yourself, and then there's no shortage of industry experts and specialization now. I think more and more professionals are dedicating themselves to really retail media, AI, and the adoption of technology and kind of really looking in the future. So, Aaron, I think it's kind of a combination of that. It's like you got to train yourself, you got to go to these shows, events, You got to educate yourself. There's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of consultants out there. And then you start bringing some of those folks that in-house, having some conversations with your leadership team. I think that's how this opens up ultimately. And then results, right? Big part of it. So that's why to me, the low hanging fruit is AI and sponsored ads. I mean, that's like the lowest hanging fruit. I mean, that's easy. And then also AMC. That's why I appreciate AMC, because AMC is also, I think, very much low hanging fruit, where you can go and get it. It's free. It now you have this clean room and you have access to this Amazon clean room free. But now look at the data. Find the right tool provider and look at the data and the rich data and look at data that you've never had before. So those two things I think are where, if I was on the brand side, that's what I would be focusing on.
Yeah. Awesome. I've been picking your brain for like 40 minutes now. Like,
Yeah.
I always like to throw it back. Like, what's top of mind? Any questions for me?
Yeah, I mean, what I love about talking to you and BWG is you guys have access to the brands. You're having those conversations. You're hosting these events, and so I'd love to hear from you. Like when you're talking to brands, when you're having those dinners, what do you think are like the top 3 or 4 pain points for stakeholders there internally? And is it? And I'd be very curious if you feel like, in your experience in the last 6 to 12 months, are people in leadership roles in these mid and enterprise brands, are they feeling like pressure that if I don't do X or if I don't bring innovation, then my job's on the line? I'd just be really curious to hear about that.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is the education piece, the number of people reaching out and wanting access to webinars or a dinner is gone up significantly. I mean, so these all get published to YouTube. This podcast goes everywhere, but we just launched a YouTube channel called Next Up in Digital, where we're taking all the webinars we do. We're going to go back to November, and we're going to every other day just start posting those ones that had the most interaction. It ends up being 99% of them are going to be out there.
Yeah.
Because there is that, there's this idea for the longest time I could let AI sit. And I was going to wait for it to really start building up some steam.
Right.
And, because they had so many other things to do. We're at a point now where people are realizing, wait a minute, if I wait 3 months, I'm a year behind everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's how fast it's going. So I would say on the side where it gets, are they thinking their job's going to be at stake? Not from that standpoint. I think it's different. The number one theme is profitability across the board and showing profitability. And what's interesting is, like, there's a massive tech stack rationalization going on right now. There's people looking at, and so I'm going to set aside the agency. I'm not talking necessarily about the agency and if you have one or not, but the actual tech stack, the ERP system, the PIM, the DAM. Are you on the right platform? Are you on BigCommerce, Shopify, Magento? Should you be on a Commerce Tools or something else? This whole rationalization is taking place right now, and it's because of profitability. People can't afford to have everything on the back end. Yeah. And that includes any kind of tech that they have, including ad tech that's going on. And what they're realizing is they need to get that rationalized to be profitable. And what they're finding along the way is the only way to get the ad tech or any kind of the technology and be profitable is it has to be AI driven. And again, this is where it's truly AI, and it because the cost is so much less than anything else that's out there. And so I think it's more along the lines of, I need to show profitability. And the only way to do that is to engage in AI. And I'm just realizing that now. And that's this flood that's coming in of interest. And it's coinciding perfectly with a lot of this new tech that's coming out. Like, I would say a year and a half ago, when ChatGPT first hit and everybody's like, AI is here and all the tools are going to be here in a year. They're not here. I agree in your time frame, which is 18 to 24 months, where anybody who's not looking now will be left behind. In the 18 to 24 month, when we do this podcast 2 years from now, we'll be totally blown away at where we're at. It'll be absolutely crazy. So, I mean, that's the number one thing. And so there's just a lot of questions around what are the newest tools? what's working, what's not, who can I talk with? When are you doing an event? Can you do another full day event? Can you do another dinner? Can you do another webinar? And it's kind of like, yes, we can. Just give us some time to put it together. Cause you know this, that where the hardest thing for us to do as a network is to stay on top of who's really working and who's not.
Yeah.
And that can change from year to year, 6 months to 6 months. And so what's really difficult is talking to enough brands to say who's working and who's not. Are they still working? Hey, we used these guys last time. Everybody loved it. Are they the right people to have back? Is there somebody better?
Yeah.
And those are the hardest things for us to do, because, somebody could have run out of funding and now they don't have anything going on. They're not going to be here in 3 months.
Yeah.
Those aren't the right partners to put in front of the brands that kind of entrust the integrity of the network to our team here. So
that makes so
the
much
cool
sense.
thing is, love what you're doing in the eCommerce team. It's pretty cool stuff. Can't wait to do some webinars and all. It's gonna be a blast, my friend.
Yeah, no, likewise. I mean, I think we're really wanting to kind of talk about the product, show the product, and really just like, we're so excited just to get it out there. We've been in the industry just for 2 years, right? So it's very much like we have a lot of people coming to us, and then I love that moment of that gotcha when they see, oh wow, this can really help me in this space, that space. That's the fun part of it. So we'll be pushing that message definitely more here the rest of 2024 and into 2025.
Yeah, I mean, one of those things is I don't think people realize what's available in a lot of cases. They don't realize, and I would totally agree when they take a look at your platform, and it's just like that. Wait, what? Wait, you can do what? I'm sorry. Like, no, go back. I know all these other platforms. I know the major players. I know it can be done. And you're like, no. I don't think it can be done.
I don't think you haven't seen it at this kind of level. And I think that's where a lot of it's just conversations and like literally popping up a demo like within and just showing the tool or doing a trial and just plug in your brand in there and see the results right there. And I think that's where there's a lot more openness to do that than I think it has been in the past. But no, I think what's interesting is like the dinners and the events. I love that interaction and talking to brands and just people in those roles. And you guys do a fantastic job there, because it's really about just trust, right? Ultimately, it's trust. Like these networking events, I think you nailed it. Like the right partner is really not the one that's looking for that quick ROI. They're really looking for trusting on, hey, who are the people in your network? Let's talk through it. And we're all kind of in this journey together, right? Where you and I have been working together since 2019, right? And here we are in 2024, and God willing, we'll work together here for the next 20, 30 years until you're retiring. I don't know about you. I don't think I'm ever retiring.
I love this. I love this space too much. I will find another time to like almost tackle you at like the next Amazon Unbox. Remember that? It was awesome. Spreading out the corner. I was like, that's Kashif.
That's awesome.
Oh, you're gonna lay me flat.
That was awesome.
Well, too much fun. Well, this has been an absolute blast. Kashif, thanks so much for your time.
Really
thank
you.
Appreciate you for years now. Supported the network, the brands that are in it, Content 26, Org Pacific, and now eCommerce. Super excited for everything you're doing. With that, I think we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for listening in. Thanks, Kashif, my friend.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it.